Hello, I'm Tom Hartman in Washington, D.C., and here's what's coming up tonight on The Big Picture. It's Friday, which means it's time for Conversations with Great Minds. Tonight, I'm joined by the brilliant comedian, author, and activist D.Gregory, who will be sharing his thoughts on where life has taken him and the direction our nation is headed. Also, with more and more people living in deep poverty than ever before in recent memory, why did the Republicans just filibuster legislation to put Americans back to work? I'll ask my panel of experts that question in tonight's Big Picture Rumble. And what does GOP TV, also known as Fox News, have to do with domestic terrorism? The answer later in tonight's Daily Take. For tonight's Conversations with Great Minds, I'm joined by none other than D.Gregory. D.Gregory is a comedian, social activist, writer, and entrepreneur whose work has redefined how many Americans, including me, perceive political comedy and African-American comedians. He got his first big break when he was hired by Hugh Hefner to perform stand-up at the Chicago Playboy Club in 1961, and he hasn't stopped since. He began political activism by running against Richard J. Daley for the mayor's office in Chicago in '67. Followed that with a write-in campaign for the Oval Office in '68 as the candidate of the Freedom and Peace Party. He's devoted himself to many causes throughout his career as an activist, including civil rights, women's rights, anti-war campaigns, and the international anti-apartheid movement and environmental protection issues. When I ran a community for abused kids in New England in the late '70s, early '80s, he was on our advisory board. He did fundraisers for our program, and we traveled together to Uganda during the end of the war with Idi Amin to set up a famine and medical relief program there. He has devoted his life to using his considerable talents and gifts for helping others. I know this from firsthand experience. He now finds himself on Comedy Central's list of the 100 greatest stand-ups of all time and has his own star on the St. Louis Walk of Fame. It's my pleasure to welcome D.Gregory to our studios and to this edition of Conversations with Great Minds.
Thank you. What a
My
blessing.
friend, it is so good to see you.
Stop drinking, man. I don't remember none of that stuff.
I think you do. I think you do. I'm curious, boy, there's so much I want to start out with. This like contemporary stuff, you know,
Yes.
this Keystone XL pipeline.
Well, everybody's starting out with Kane,
politics.
Herman Kane.
Well, I don't even want, you know, Herman
No,
Cain's
but-
not even running for president.
Well, maybe not. He's brilliant.
How so?
He was chairman of the Kansas City Federal Reserve. No Negro have ever had that spot.
So.
That means what we're looking at, he's dumbing down.
Oh, interesting.
He took the American Restaurant Association, headed that. No Negro ever headed an organization that big. And when he left after 8 years, they was almost the same power as the National Rifle Association.
Right.
That's Herman.
Right.
And so I hope he wins the nomination. Then Americans will have a choice of one brother or another one.
Yeah.
So he couldn't play the brilliant role because Obama done already claimed that.
Yeah.
So I'll be over here on the other side. So America will have a choice, this brilliant one or this dumb one.
Yeah, but he's not a dumb one.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. You see, we went to bed one night 2 weeks ago and woke up and he was number one. And nobody said, how'd he get there?
Yeah.
How'd he get there? You cannot be chairman of the Kansas City Federal Reserve and say, you know, when I get to be president, I want the Secret Service to call me cornbread. Because the people who that bothers, that's not the ones he's looking for a vote.
Yeah.
And so it's him and Romney. Romney will never be president. Never. You know, the Mormon thing.
Yeah.
You can tell because nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
And if you look at when we had the first Polish Pope, 1.5 million white folks left the Catholic Church. That's the church. I can go into a bar and white folks won't leave. But going to the church, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun.
It's going to be a real interesting year.
It's going to be probably one of the most interesting years in the history of planet Earth, mainly because of the occupiers. See, everybody's overlooked them, including themselves.
Well, you know, what are your thoughts on this Occupy movement?
Well,
how it's shaken out and how it's...
I was with them was my second time in New York with them. Here I was there opening day. And they keep asking me, said, what do we need to learn from the civil rights movement? Nothing. Nothing at all. You see, white folks in America, I don't care how rich, how poor, how short, how tall, how educated, you're born with 300 years of white privilege.
You're right.
Okay? Now, that's what the cops is not aware of. See, they thinking they dealing with some black folks or some Mexican. No, no. You see, before King was assassinated, we were coming to Washington. Poor folks campaign, remember?
I do.
Poor folks don't threaten nobody. They come in here talking about take back D.C., huh? They in New York talking about occupy. Where did you ever use a little boy? Where was that word occupy? It was always the mighty nation occupying the poor, and they listen to their words.
Yeah.
They not aware of it. Now, the problem is this. They will have to watch out for what we saw happen in Oakland. Those are government people who infiltrate.
Yeah, it was like this was in a different place after the gig was over, and it was about 50 folks.
That's right. Then all at once.
And this is what we saw back in the 60s.
That's what we saw. Look here. This is J. Edgar Hoover. Here. See that headline? Chicago Tribune.
Okay, let me hold this up for the camera.
FBI memo.
Shot of this thing. FBI memo.
Use mob against Dick Gregory.
Use mob against Dick Gregory.
I'm one of the cleanest human beings on the planet.
Yeah.
Who would ever believe that Hoover would get in touch with the Chicago FBI and say, Dick Gregory said all kind of bad things about the mob. Tell them, and they'll kill him for it. See, these youngsters out there is not aware. Here is probably one of the most important documents I ever stole. I mean, somebody gave me. Okay? That is the military intelligence that moved into Memphis in
Civil disorder Operation Lantern Spire. March 28.
That's before King was
68,
killed.
yeah.
And came out the 12th. Now, nobody would, on their life, would believe that that's how big that. See, the King was not killed.
Now, this is from U.S. Army intelligence.
U.S. Army intelligence, you know.
To move in and cover civil disorder Operation.
That's before King even knew he had to go there.
Right.
They hadn't, and when he went in, that little riot broke off. Those was government provocateurs.
Right.
Okay? Government provocateurs.
Right.
So now King had to go back to prove that he can run a nonviolent march. And that's when they took him out. Now these little young children out here is saying, take back this. You can't take it back. You're talking about the military. So everything, they got to infiltrate them. Here's the scenario. They'll infiltrate. They'll dress up little young white girls, make them look like women, and then get child molest. That's where it's going. See, what they have to do now is change the image in people's mind. The reason they got a problem, because folks who don't know they 99%, they feel something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you take the beautiful thing the president did the other day. I'm gonna forgive college debt. Okay? That damn near made me want to go back to school. You know, but here's the problem. What about grandmother, your grandfather that's suffering like a dog, never been to school? And my tax money got to pay. See, we're in a box where you can't get out now.
Yeah.
And the way you handle that, you said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to forgive this debt, but also those folks who can't read or write, those folks that suffer and have to eat 3 meals a day, that have children and grandchildren, celebrate Christmas and Easter, then it should have been something for them.
Yeah.
A training program to be a locksmith, huh? Yeah. A training program to, you know, and then you balance it out. Yeah. We've never balanced it out. And the problem with America is I take all my grandchildren to a paper mill. You ever been past a paper mill?
Yeah, they smell like
no
sulfur.
stink like that.
Yeah, there's
the people work there don't smell it.
Yeah.
And that's what's wrong with America.
Because it's in their blood.
We don't smell our stink.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been stinking for so long, the DNA caters to it. And that's what's gonna bring us a free press. And I released the pictures with Ron Brown, ex-secretary, Commerce, with the bullet.
Who died in the plane?
With the bullet in the back of his head.
Oh.
Well, who gave it to me? The folks at Armed Forces Institute of Paris who did the autopsy, all right? So they couldn't say it. I went to the press, New York Times, Washington Post, nobody ran it.
No, the official story is he died in a plane crash.
That's the official story. Huh? That's the official story. And so consequently, the official story of JFK, he was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, I
but
know he went after the Warren Commission.
Nobody asked a simple question. Well, how could he defect? He's in the military and go to Russia, huh?
Right.
Turn his back on America, come back with a Russian wife, and nobody asked him any questions about that.
And John Tower brought him through JFK.
Okay.
Yeah. He was a senator at the time.
See, here's what the downfall of this nation got. The downfall of this nation is not corrupt politicians. No, they've been corrupt. They was corrupt in Rome. I mean, we're in the same spot the Germans was in right before Hitler took over.
Yeah.
And the reason we haven't produced a Hitler, we can't find an honest demagogue.
Certainly not Romney.
Not at all. And so it's this whole...
Pat Buchanan keeps getting outed.
Oh, yeah. And it could be saved, but they don't know. They wouldn't know how to say it. America is less than a fifth of the world's population. 94% of all the world's hard drugs is consumed in America. Yeah. That's not counting alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine.
Right.
And so when you stop and think about what we hide, what we keep hiding, because we keep talking about America, the beautiful, the powerful, the mighty. Anytime you mix up democracy and capitalism, then you got a problem.
Yeah.
And so, and this is what the young folks, see, the young folks is not listening to NBC and CBS and all that crap. They listen to them shows where they're getting their news from them shows that's talking about what happened today here. And so, I mean, we stupid enough to know that I have the folks that did the autopsy on Ryan. Bring me the pictures. And NBC don't know that? Yeah. NBC? And so all of the stuff that's being hid, all these top folks in the media, they know it, but they keep it. So my grandmother, believed that these guys is to the God kissed them and sent them down here to give Americans the news. They're going to wake up for a rude awakening. And then the cops, they don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, being a cop is a bad job. Yeah. No intelligent white boy, would want to be a cop.
I had
too many opportunities.
I had the president of the Oakland Police Officers Association on my radio show 2 days ago.
Yes.
And he's like, the mayor's telling us one thing, and then she's telling us another thing, and we don't know what the hell's going on. And basically, it's not. We were just following orders, And I said, well, just following orders, that didn't work so well in the 40s.
No, but that's when I say following orders to me. That's I send my children to school. Yeah. But I would tell him, go back and study what happened to them white children up in Seattle, Washington, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Mayor stepped down.
At the WTO.
Cop lost his job.
Yeah.
And but two things I would tell people to look at now. What happened 2 Sundays back in Albany, New York, when they took over? Take over is a bad word, but them one fight, they think white, they don't care. They're not taking over, they presenting. Yeah. But they took over the governor's, which was a public park in Albany. Now here is this governor, Como, they grooming him to be president 2 shots. He lost that. He called the state police. The mayor of Albany called the city police. City police and state police got to say, we're not arresting them. Did you see that story?
Oh, we did that.
We are not arresting them because they're not breaking no. And then went further to say, governors and mayors do not know how to tell police to police.
That's right.
Then you switch from there and go to St. Paul Cathedral. That is the Church of England. Huh? They were shut down this week for the first time since Hitler was bombing London. Okay? 2 of the bishops have resigned. Yeah. See, they're not dealing with just the normal folks that they've been dealing with. And these young folks, I'm going to London. We got a big demonstration with British Patrol. I'm going there and talk to them and say, y'all got them. You can get anything you want. Anything you want. Because the Olympics is coming here next year.
Oh, so they got.
And they don't want a rumble. These young folks take over. All they have to do is threaten Thanksgiving to call for a Christmas boycott. Yeah. and America's over. They couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
You know.
So
just to
national
look.
buy nothing days.
That's right. Not one day.
Yeah.
The whole day.
Yeah. There you go. We'll be right back with more conversations with great minds with Dick Gregory in just a moment.
What drives the world?
The fear-mongering used by politicians.
Who makes decisions?
Considerable breakthrough has already been made.
Who can you trust?
No one who is imbued with a global missionary zeal.
Where are we heading?
State-controlled capitalism is called fascism.
When nobody dares to ask, we do. RT, question more.
Welcome back to Conversations with Great Minds. Tonight I'm speaking with the legendary comedian, actor, activist, and author Dick Gregory. Lawrence Brewer is a guy whose name I think most Americans don't even know.
Yes.
The media wasn't paying any attention to. And yet you were down there in Texas on the day that everybody else was looking at something else. Tell us about that.
Well, Lawrence Brewer and 2 other white men with him killed James Byrd.
Right.
There's no word, assassination, hanging, that nothing matches it. The reason, they've done this before all over the world, but we never had cameras. And the conscious now, when you put it in people's face, they arrested those 3 whites before they even identified who the Negro was. Huh?
The dead guy.
Yeah, and that's why Bush, president, had never came up when he was running because the justice was so swift.
Yeah.
2 of them they sentenced to death. 1 of them, because he was the witness, he got long term in jail. So this one came up for execution 3 years ago. I called Martin Luther King III and said, some folks, the death penalty movement in Houston called me and asked me, and I love it, would you go with me? Yes. Then we found his son, his youngest son.
Wow. Now, just to clarify, this is a white guy who brutally murdered.
Yes.
I mean, you know, dragged in the back of a truck, who
Yes.
brutally murdered a black guy in Jasper, Texas.
Yes.
You're there to protest the
What's worse
execution
than that,
of the white guy.
He's one of the white folks that white folks who don't like California thought he needed to die.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we get Martin Luther King III, and we bring in his son, and we rehearse. Said, the night your father was lynched and just body tore up, where were you? He said, I was in Camp Lejeune. I just joined the Marines. I was in boot camp. See, when did you get the word? The company commander came and told me. So what happened then? They gave me 2 weeks. I went to the funeral. What happened then? Then I went back.
Son.
I went back, finished boot camp, went to Iraq.
The son of the guy who had just been murdered.
Son of the guy.
Okay, so the murderer now is going to be executed in Texas. Everybody is looking at, instead at, what was it, Todd?
Troy.
Yeah,
Troy Davis.
Troy Davis,
yes.
thank you. Who was being executed. And,
Yes.
and instead, you're going to
Well, I
Texas.
had gone to the rally for Troy Davis before.
Okay.
I didn't think he was going to die. I just absolutely didn't believe they was going to do that.
Yeah.
You see, I look at this as a black man, like prostitute. If a dude go to a prostitute house and he said, yeah, I'm looking for Sweet Mary. Oh, her mother died, she's not here. Well, is Candy here? You see, I really like this one. If I can't get this one, bring me another one. Yeah. That's the same thing with the mentality of a lot of white folks with Negroes. Get the right one, but if you can't, just bring us one. So that's what happened with Troy Davis. Just bring us one. Right, so now I really did. But all the world, see, there's never been an execution in the history of the planet that had the worldwide press because of the electronics, the iPhone, all this, that. And people could listen and see the Pope, and everybody was there. So I went to the rally. Then I flew in to Huntsville, Texas, and I had a group. We got there at midnight, and we fasted and meditated till 6 o'clock that evening. And then they executed him. And my wife had called me and said, Troy Davis got to stay. And then 10 minutes later, she called me and said, no, it didn't happen. He's still up. And that night, I really, see, I'm not one of these. See, I was for capital punishment. I still had a gun in my house, okay? I'm not one of these that say capital punishment is bad because sometimes people's too poor to get a good lawyer, sometimes the wrong person. I don't know. I just do not believe the state. See, a brutal crime, if I commit that, then for the rest of my life, that's punishment. Execute is revenge. The state should not be in revenge. If me and my wife cussed all day and smoked dope all day and got drunk and fought all day, I lose the right to have the moral authority to tell my children they can't do it. And so I was there for that. Never before, out of everything I demonstrate, have I had the reaction of D.Gregory, a militant black person.
Showing up to protest the execution of a white guy who had,
Now here's what I'm trying. I'm going in to testify against British Petroleum in Congress.
Yeah.
A white congressman walks off to Dick Gregory. Yeah, can I hug you? He said, oh my God, what you did for that white racist who needed to die changed my life. Wow. He said, I used to be for capital punishment. After watching you, I'm against it. Then I had a guy at Take Back D.C. said, I'm from Oregon, man, and I was for Troy Davis living because you know he didn't do it, but the other one, and said, now I'm against capital punishment. There's no way you can't play a game with it. Yeah. No, if they had Hitler and was going to execute him, I would be against it. And I can understand Jews being upset. You know, somebody killed my family. And I'm protesting for them. My wife probably be protesting against me. That's the emotional thing. But the last person standing will be the one.
But for a state to have moral authority, it can't be engaged in the murder business.
You cannot, in no shape, form, or fashion.
You were also arrested September 3rd. You mentioned BP just a second ago, blocking the entrance in a protest against BP. In fact, I think you went to court about this today.
I was in court today.
Yeah.
You know.
You were concerned about the way that they're handling this $20 billion victims compensation fund. Is that the Gulf?
The poor people, poor white women, black folks, Mexicans, no money. They've had doctors' statements. They find that the solvent they used is made in Europe, but it cannot be used there. Cannot be used there. Right. And so out of the 10 different compounds they have in that, they find 9 of them in people's blood, and yet and still they said, no, Ken Feinberg, no, we don't have to pay that. That's not true. It didn't happen. And so when you look, who did they pay off first? The casinos. Why? Because they have somebody that's backing them. The governor, okay, paid them off, everything. So Art Rocker, a black brother, brilliant, put a group together with lawyers, and they said, no, you're going to pay these underserved. So he called me. And I said, well, look, what's your situation look like? And he said, well, there's a smart black woman lawyer. You have to have a woman lawyer with that understand children, that understand women. So Sister Faye Williams, she joined on board. And then we have a good strategy team now we can put down, because we forget about women. We forget about children and all that. And so now all at once, the bill comes to about $900 million, and no way. Well, if you own a construction company and you build in this $600 million hotel, if you finish late, you get penalized. If you finish early, you get a reward. I think Ken Feinberg is getting a reward with all he can't pay out. See, he's the same one that handled He's the guy who's handling the Victim Restitution Fund, and he handled it for 9/11 victims. Wait a minute now. He also handled it for Agent Orange.
Oh, really?
Okay? So he looked like he's the hitman
Yeah.
for the thugs.
Yeah.
And so we go over to British Petroleum headquarters and stand. We had a meeting with them, but we buy stock. We stockholders.
Sure.
So and then we come back here, and now we're going to Houston to the office. They keep giving you the runaround, but that's what you have to take when you can't have no attitude when you're dealing with other people. If you're a brain surgeon, huh? Right. And you got robbed this morning, you still got to come in and cut my head open. You have to put that stuff. So that's what we're doing now. We're fixing to go on a tour around the country, and we're going to hook up. We're hooking up now with the takeover movement, not to bring them into our movement, to let them know. Now, they keep asking me, what do we need to do to get more black folk? Well, what you're talking about don't pertain to me, okay? When you start talking about police brutality on a nationwide level, my grandmother, who's on oxygen in a wheelchair, all the while she become her boy. That's what have to happen. That the fear that white folks don't know, that when your child go out, your son go out, you scared. My mama used to tell me to behave, huh? Because you can't tell the cops to behave. Yeah. You know, I mean, are you telling me that a mentally retarded 13-year-old can come to Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, never been there, and in 15 minutes can find the drug pushers, but the cops can't find them? Yeah. This is the game, and this is what's bringing, and these youngsters that's coming out here with the elders that know something's wrong. They don't feel it. They know. That's why they listen to your show. I listen to your show, man. I said, wow, man, Jesus Christ. Now, you couldn't do this in Russia. I'm not one of these apologize. I mean, you couldn't have a show saying the things honestly about Russia in Russia that you can say here. I still don't know how you get by with it.
You couldn't probably in 4/5 of the countries of the world.
None of them. No, none of them. You know, and that's what these youngsters is talking about, and they feel it. They feel the energy, and so I've just been happy. I'm just happy I'm out here, man, just having fun. Yeah. Let me just say something that for health.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask. We have 2 minutes left. I was going to ask you about.
I was at a play last night. Anne Frank and the Tillman, who was murdered. Yeah. And there, the vice president was there. And then I look over here and I see Michael Douglas. And tears came to my eyes, man. Just the way he looks from the pit of death. And I didn't have enough time. I want to find, what are you doing right? Because you have jobs, $300 billion in his personal account, and he couldn't make 70 years old. I got a trifling drug addict, alcoholic uncle that's 80 and sleeping in the street, and him with all this money could not. What are you doing wrong? You know, you get praised all over the world. What if he would have knew a little about the human body, which the universal God made, not the cell phone? He could have been here, and what's in his mind? You know, what can I look at this and see where it helped wipe out hunger? Where it created love? You can't. Yeah. And
this is your book, Cooking with Mother Nature.
Cooking with Mother Nature, yeah.
That was spectacular.
Yeah. I'm 80, my wife, well, I'm born in 1932. Yeah. So it's smart people that listen to these shows. Yeah. They call and said, look, you're born in 1932, you're just 79. I said, no, I count the 9 months in my mother's belly. And they said, well, that's still not, and then the 3 months that my father was begging.
Okay. Dick Gregory, it is such an honor to have you
on.
My
pleasure, brother.
Thanks so much for
Peace to you. Emmett Till, that's the name I was trying to think. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. To watch this conversation again, as well as other conversations with great minds, go to our website at conversationswithgreatminds.com. Get out the boxing gloves. When we come back, my panel and I will take on this week's major headlines in the Big Picture Rumble. Bring it on.
What drives the world?
The fear-mongering used by politicians.
Who makes decisions?
Considerable breakthrough has already been made.
Who can you trust?
No one who is imbued with a global missionary zeal.
Where are we heading?
State-controlled capitalism is called fascism.
When nobody dares to ask, we do. RT, question more.
Are you ready to rumble? Joining me this week for the Big Picture Rumble are Derek Hunter, columnist at Town Hall, contributing writer for BigGovernment.com and the Daily Caller, Erica Canuti, a Democratic strategist here in Washington, D.C., and Tony Katz, host of the Tony Katz Radio Spectacular on the All Patriots Media Network. Let's get started. So why do Republicans hate average Americans and love billionaires? We got a jobs and poverty crisis in America. Yeah, Republicans filibustered another jobs bill in the Senate last night. President Obama wants to put 450,000 Americans back to work rebuilding roads that really need it, and would have paid for with a 0.7% surtax on every dollar made after the first million. It won a majority of votes in the Senate, but it was still filibustered by the Republicans. Republicans have filibustered cutting off oil subsidies to the 5 big oil companies, Exxon, Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips, Shell, even though they're already making over $100 billion this year. No, we've got to give them another $6 billion in corporate welfare. Republicans are calling for lower corporate tax rates, even though GE, Boeing, Wells Fargo paid zero taxes in the last 3 years, made $160 billion bucks. And, I just don't get it.
I don't get where you're trying to come from with this question, Tom. It was a bipartisan filibuster, Tom. It was two a Democrat and an independent. You don't like the Democrats who voted against it, but
you hate Bill Nelson.
That's just how it is.
You hate Floridians.
I think
obviously.
It wasn't Bill Nelson.
Ben Nelson, Nebraska.
I'll stand up for Republicans here, and I'll say that, Tom, I'm not willing to say that they don't hate everyday Americans. They just really love billionaires much more than everyday Americans. No,
Barack Obama has dinner with billionaires all the time, so he seems very fond of them.
I think, but we're talking. Let's go back to the Senate bill here and the jobs and this issue with the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. The infrastructure in this country is decaying. It is a massive problem. We saw the Minneapolis bridge, which collapsed, which is why Amy Klobuchar was the sponsor of this bill. And we know how many bridges are out there that are not structurally sound. And it's shovel-ready in a lot of places. We can put people to work.
What was the $1 trillion stimulus we passed? There was money in that for infrastructure,
there was,
right?
and there was money that went out, and there was also a lot of money that went to the states to help out.
That they didn't spend on infrastructure.
The problem with the conversation is that, and I apologize if I got the wrong Nelson there, you're thinking that government is the answer for how we get jobs back. Removing regulation, decreasing of corporate tax rates, allow the small business owner, it's a simple, basic conversation, allow the small business owner to hire.
To creating jobs, but I think that government can create jobs.
No,
government jobs.
has never created a job in its existence.
What's the difference between a taxpayer paying money off of their government job or off of a private sector job? Tell me how the economy suffers from government jobs. Are teachers' jobs not as valuable?
Because the economy doesn't grow under government jobs.
It can't.
The private sector grows and creates more jobs, and that grows.
A job is a job.
No, it's not a job.
It's not a job.
No, it's not a job. A government job. A government job takes wealth, and a private sector job creates wealth. There's a huge difference.
So what about all the unemployed government workers at some point?
There aren't enough of them. How's that?
Well, I would say that. So are you going on the record saying that you think that we should increase unemployment?
Yes. If it comes from cutting government,
they've laid off 800,000 people so far this year.
They buy groceries. They pay their mortgage.
You want to talk about anemic job growth? We had 80,000 jobs created this month.
Actually, we had 104,000.
Well, whatever. We still need 300,000 a month to keep up with population growth alone. To maintain zero degrees.
Right, so stop filibustering the president's efforts to get jobs.
You're right.
Where are they? What did we spend $1 trillion on, Tom?
We know what jobs there are out there. Those private construction companies that build roads and bridges and infrastructure, those are private sector jobs.
Right.
There's plenty of jobs. So are those jobs not okay?
You know what jobs?
You love defense
contractors?
If we want to talk
because I bet you rail against those, but you're all.
I rail against.
I want to move along to another topic here. This is.
I'll tell you what.
Republicans put forward their first proposal for the Gang of 12. It was $800 billion in tax cuts, mostly for the rich. So Reagan's tax cuts in the 1980s were super Keynesian stimulus, right? He borrows 3 times the national debt, spends it, and then claims credit for the good times that came out of that.
President can't spend a dime without Congress. The Democrat Congress spent
the second, does the same thing, $5 trillion.
It has to originate in the Republican House.
Yeah, indeed. And actually, these were the budgets that Reagan proposed.
Right.
You go back, and these were the budgets that Reagan proposed.
No budget Reagan proposed ever got passed.
Case.
No budget Reagan proposed ever got passed.
Maybe not to the
They were called DOA.
In every
Is there
single
a question?
But here's the question. Our Republican, Reagan runs up our national debt. Bush runs up our national debt. This is supposed to give us economic good times. And then the Republicans are screaming about the debt.
But you're opposed to running up the national debt
or do you not care about the
Wait. You're also ignoring the fact that the only person that then took the debt and balanced the budget would be, a Democrat, Bill Clinton. Well, that was the last time it was done.
Who was in charge of Congress at the time? So you're coming out for Newt Gingrich now? Good.
No.
I'm sure you'd be glad to hear it.
My point is this, is that there's a problem.
Excuse me, I just have to answer that. Newt Gingrich stood on the floor of the House of Representatives and ordered every single Republican to vote against that budget that balanced the budget with Bill Clinton, and said, in fact, if that budget was passed, it would lead America into, quoting Newt Gingrich, the next Great Depression.
That was
end quote,
1993.
and there was not one single Republican vote for that budget.
That was 1993. Republicans took over in 95. The balanced budget started happening in 96, 97.
There's a
connection there.
You don't pass the spending levels for 1994 in 1994. I mean, you have to also understand.
I know. We didn't pass them in 93.
I want to go back to this idea that the idea that taxes are the big problem here. When you have a pool of money, you need to be raising money. You need to have money coming in and money going out. And this idea that we'll continue to have money going out in these wars, which we're now starting to draw back down. But let me finish. Let me finish. Is that the money is just going out, and we're not. It's not going to be discretionary spending, whatever. But that we don't have to take anything in. We're taking in less money than we took in before.
No, we are not.
Yes, we've taken a giant wealth disparity in the fact that there are corporations, and that, as Buffett says that he paid a lower tax rate than his secretary.
Give his secretary a raise or cut a check to the government. He's free to pay as much as he wants. Instead of taking his money as a dividend, as an investment income, take it as a salary, and he will pay a hell of a lot more.
The way that it is structured that people like him are paying a lower rate. They're not paying as big of a
The reason people like
Hold on.
We've got a special tax rate for people who make their money with money. That's the bottom line. Republicans like that.
Pays so little in taxes.
It's because he's paying capital gains.
He hires the biggest accounting firms in the world to crawl up the coal into the tax code and find every possible
he does his own tax.
And he still owes $1 billion for Berkshire Hathaway. There are two conversations at play. Hold on, I got to interrupt you. There are two conversations at play. If we're in favor of balancing budgets, why in the world would you be in favor of Obama? Because he isn't balancing a budget. He is spending like a drunken sailor. And what you're saying is you're claiming that Reagan exploded.
But your Republican Congress?
You're
explaining
that you're
first of all, the first 2 years were under Nancy Pelosi, who was a do-nothing in herself.
No, she made herself a lot of money.
The second conversation, hold on a second.
I have to hold you to task on the do-nothing.
What's the whole
I will hold you to task on do-nothing. In terms of how many bills have been passed, we are at half the level of bills that were passed through Congress.
Thank God! The last thing we need is more government.
Is it do-nothing? Was that an insult
Tony,
to Nancy Pelosi? Hold on. Was do-nothing an insult? Was do-nothing a criticism that Nancy Pelosi was ineffective because she did nothing, and then now you're going to say that it would have been better if she had done nothing?
She did nothing for the economy. She did nothing for the budget. She did nothing for spending.
That worked well.
Stimulus doesn't work.
Actually, the stimulus was very successful.
And by the way, she flat out lied the other day when she said we would be at 15% unemployment. It is a lie. She is a liar.
I need my bell here. She did pass 220 pieces of legislation that got filibustered by the Republicans in the Senate.
And that did great on the economy.
Including a piece of legislation that would have said we're going to give people corporations tax breaks for bringing jobs back home.
Democrats had 60 votes in the Senate. The Republican filibuster was impossible.
The state of
but it only takes one senator to filibuster.
I want to move along here.
The state of Vermont is trying to be...
How am I the most balanced guy on this panel?
I don't know. It's not possible. The state of Vermont is trying to be the first state in the country to set up a statewide single-payer system, healthcare system. Two different non-political governmental agencies, basically guys with green eye shades in Vermont, crunch the numbers on this. And the state of Vermont will save, if they put into place this statewide, basically Medicare Part E, everybody's covered. If they put it into this place, they will save $1.8 billion, E for everybody, $1.8 billion over the next decade. And here's a chart. This is from the National Nurses Association. This chart shows how a national single-payer system would not only replace all the jobs lost in the last year of the Bush administration, the 2.6 million jobs, and Medicare, it's over here on the plaza. And look at the economic stimulus. The Citigroup bailout cost us this is for a national health care program, okay? The Citigroup bailout cost us $351 billion. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac cost us $238 billion. TARP cost us $168 billion. AIG cost us $150 billion. To cover every single American with a national health care program would cost $63 billion. Are we insane to not do this?
Can I take that one first? First of all, go back to that chart. If you go back really quickly, I'm not in favor of any of those bailouts, and I'm sure as heck not in favor of any kind of health care plan that forces me into contract via the barrel of a gun. It's just wrong.
No, I'm talking about a national.
Single-payer
I was a
mandate.
health policy
Mandate.
analyst at the Heritage Foundation. I studied this.
You have my sympathy.
Canada is moving away from their single-payer system. They're implementing.
You try telling that to a Canadian sometime.
I tried telling it to the Canadian system is great until you get seriously ill. You get the flu, it's great. You get cancer, you're sent to the United States because you can't get treatment.
Not true.
Same
Not
in the
true.
UK. They're moving towards a private system because the public system is failing.
Absolutely
It treats everybody equally badly.
Absolutely.
It's a great system as long as you don't get
absolutely
sick.
not true. This is
It
the
is.
mythology
I'm from
the right-wingers
Detroit. People
promote
would come across.
I lived in Detroit as well.
Would
and
come
I lived
across
in
the river
Vermont.
for cancer treatment.
Nonsense.
I think
Nonsense.
I lived in
I'll bet
Montpelier,
you
Vermont,
$1,000.
an hour and a half south of Montpelier, or what is in Montreal. Thank you. And every
Quebec is
week
going private.
I never saw a Canadian in Montpelier looking for health care, but every single week the buses.
Did you see
Let me
Ronnie
finish
on
the
the street with
sentence.
cancer
Every
here?
week the buses would line up to fill with Americans to go up to Montreal to buy pharmaceuticals.
Those same buses would bring cancer patients back to the United States. I will bet you.
Wasn't happening.
Well,
I will
here,
bet
let me say something about
You might think it was an anecdote.
what makes
No, you won't
Vermont's
find-
system
the
a
government
good.
system.
Vermont is a really great state to kind of be a pilot program for this. It's a rather homogeneous population. It's a smaller population, so you can do it on a smaller
The
scale.
minister of Ottawa's health system came to the United States for his cancer treatment. The guy who decides who gets what came to the United States.
Well, you can keep going down that road, and we can do anecdotes of who came across what border. But what I'm trying, but let's go back to the idea that Vermont's an unusually good state to try as a pilot program.
Frankly, I don't care if a state does it. The 10th Amendment allows it.
Because what it does is it allows you to take, a system that's large enough to actually test out what it's like to do something universally, but not so large that it becomes, too difficult to actually shift the system.
I don't care if
so what I'm going to just hold on.
They're free to do it. The 10th Amendment allows them to screw up.
I'm not saying that they're not free to do it. So just hold on 1 minute. So my point is that, and to do it, when we looked at doing this for the national, for America across the board, we found that it was a tough thing to do because there's enough jobs in the insurance companies and the way the system currently is, and that with the economy being as kind of volatile as it was, that it was kind of an unsure, and we were trying to do a bigger compromise and a hybrid of bills and economic systems that the Republicans supported, and then the Republicans backed out and didn't want to play ball. But that's not to say that single payer wouldn't work. It would you need to be all in if you're going to do it.
In a state,
there's no
it might
hybrid
work
way to do it.
until the people without insurance start flooding there. Somebody without insurance gets sick, they move there.
So everybody has overwhelmed Massachusetts now. Everybody
who wants to move to Massachusetts?
Why does everyone
it's
keep
not a
telling
single
me that
payer
Massachusetts
system.
works with its healthcare system?
Yeah, it is.
Massachusetts is
not a single payer system.
But a state can do whatever they want.
Doctors have stopped seeing patients. They're not interested. The wait times have increased.
So we all agree Mitt Romney screwed it up, I guess. In any case, Democrats.
It doesn't work. You can't make socialism work.
Democrats in Michigan
can't even make it work in the occupied zones with socialists.
Democrats in Michigan have passed a law trying to crack down on bullying. Mm-hmm. The leading cause of teen suicides in the United States is mostly gay teens who are bullied. And so they passed this law, they named it after this kid, Matt Epling, and the Republicans just in the Senate today passed an amendment to that bill that says the bill does not prohibit a statement of a sincerely held religious belief or moral conviction. In other words, if your religion teaches you to hate gays, it's okay to bully them to death.
I want you to show me. I want you to show me. I want you to show me.
That's hilarious.
This conversation that you have because you're attacking Christians. That's what you're doing. God forbid you should believe. God forbid you should believe in Jesus. I'm not
Jesus did not hate gays.
I want you to show me where. I want you to show me where there are Christians out there saying, in schools, I hate you and I hope you jump off a bridge and die because you're gay. I want you to show me
outside
the
the
Westboro
Baptist
that
Church.
requires
The Westboro Baptist
are
Church
mutants
is
and are hardly
protesting
indicative
soldiers
of anybody who's religious,
Yes.
and that's disgusting that you would even mention that. They're universally condemned, and you know better.
And that's the
But you
point.
know, that's
You don't need a
let me
law.
Universally
Okay,
condemned.
keep coming at me in both directions, or we can actually have a conversation.
Be right.
Because
What's
you
the
said,
point?
show me a
Bound by
Christian.
reality.
And my point is that...
I'm talking about schools.
Well, hold on. You said, show me some Christians. And what I'm willing... the point...
anti-bullying
Hold on.
legislation.
You want to have two conversations or one? You said, show me some Christians. And the point is that there are extremists within every religion. The same way that nobody thinks that Al-Qaeda represents Muslims, no one should think that the Westboro Baptist Church reflects Christians. But to say that because God told me that I can beat this kid because what he's doing is wrong, or that I don't believe in it, is not okay. It's not lawful under any.
And it is an assault.
It is an assault.
It is a crime. Let's treat
Assault
it as
is
a
an assault,
crime.
and I agree with you.
You cannot legislate
But there is-
morality. We're not agreeing with bullies. You can't legislate
morality,
it.
so we should not have laws against theft.
That's not
That's about personal property.
That's not. So it's
That's
not.
about personal property.
So it's not immoral to steal something.
What you're saying is that you want to legislate.
I think what you mean to say,
He says you
well,
can't
that's what I think you mean to
legislate.
say. I think what you mean to say is thought, not morality.
Excuse me. Nobody can hear us when all four of us are talking.
Yeah.
Nobody can hear a word we're saying. Just for the record. Okay. So back to this point. If you're saying that if your religion teaches you to hate gays, it's okay to intimidate a kid to the point where
I absolutely did not say that. Never once. Go back and check the tape. What I'm saying is that what this law is trying to do is prevent Christians from being Christians, and Christians teach that homosexuality is a sin. You want to take that out. You can't. You can argue whether Christians are right about it, but you can't tell Christians they can or can't teach based on their beliefs.
I'm a Christian, and I was never taught in my church that being gay is wrong. In fact, I was taught.
Will tell me that I'm wrong.
Well, I will say, in fact, I was taught that what Jesus was here on earth to do was to teach us to treat. He had dinner with the tax collectors and the lepers and with the prostitutes, and that God is the ultimate judge. This is just what I was taught, and that it is not, and that is to love.
I don't like
love thy
the
neighbor as
invasion on free
thyself,
speech.
and it is to
What is
treat
bullying
man
to
with
you
respect.
isn't bullying to me, isn't bullying to the cameraman. It's subjective. It's more thought policing than anything else. It's a thought crime. It's a camel nose under the tent into thought crime. Bullying should be dealt with by the teacher and by the parents.
Terrorism.
It happens. It helps. It's terrorism.
It is terrorism.
It is
torture.
terrorism.
I think
So
it's
the guys who flew the planes in 9/11 are the same as a kid calling somebody fat.
Their goal was to scare the hell
That's
out
your
of us.
perverted view of
Their
reality.
goal was to change. Terrorism is trying to change
Can you
people's behavior
prove
with
that bullying
threats.
leads
And
to
intimidation.
something?
I can prove
because
that
people
bullying
who aren't
leads to
bullied
suicide.
commit suicide too.
Yes.
So what happens
No,
there?
The
So
evidence
only people who
the
ever committed
scientific
suicide were
medical evidence
bullied?
on this is not in dispute.
No,
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
The goal of bullying is to intimidate another person through threat of violence or the kind of persistent terror.
It's also
of
called
violence.
part of being a kid, for God's sake.
I actually think that
Some
you can
kids
grow
got
up
ears
as a
sticking out,
child.
they get made
I think
fun
you can
of.
grow up as a child without being made fun of and be perfectly
And
healthy.
then we end up with a whole bunch
individual.
of people with really high self-esteem and no justification for it, who end up
So
camping
we
in
need
parks
bullies.
demanding other people's
I would
stuff.
say that people that don't
Good
think
job.
I would think that people that think that they deserve tax breaks for being nothing
we're
but
gonna
rich
stop
should be the
this
ones
right.
entitled.
We got to go to quickfire here. Since sexual harassment allegations surfaced against Herman Cain over the weekend, his campaign announced he's raised a whopping $1.2 million. So it looks like getting yourself involved in a scandal and then blaming liberals for targeting you is a pretty lucrative tactic. So what other scandal might some cash-hungry Republican candidates get themselves involved in? This is a quick fire. This is a 15, 20-second answer, just to bring in a few more bucks. A, Mitt Romney leaks a story that he's embraced his polygamous roots and has 4 secret wives. B, Rick Perry fesses up to his bizarre speech in New Hampshire and admits, yeah, he's one of the lizard people wearing a human costume. C, Rick Santorum assaults a Starbucks worker after he's asked if he wants his cappuccino extra frothy. Or you can make up your own.
Well, I think that it might be Mitt Romney's caught drinking a Coke, or maybe one of them spreads a rumor that they spent $37,500 to have dinner with Obama at one of his rich people fundraisers.
That would raise millions.
I think assaulting a Starbucks worker, I think we can all agree that we are tired of paying $4 for a coffee and that we would like it to go back to being 89 cents like it was in the days when 7-Eleven is where you got your coffee.
How do you follow the 89-cent coffee lady? None of those stories are worth the time. It's just the important thing to remember is that if you don't like Herman Cain, you're racist. And I think that's the important thing to remember here.
Right. And my take on it is that Herman Cain is going to jump into another scandal to make another $1 million by announcing that he is the love child of the Koch brothers' dad, Fred Koch. Here he is doing it.
Well, just so I can clarify this for the media, this may be a breaking news announcement for the media. I am the Koch brothers' brother from another mother. Yes, I'm their brother from another mother.
Okay.
I wish I was,
so,
man.
There you go.
I want a piece of that, Will.
Derek, Erica, Tony.
I'd have my own island on this.
Thank you all for being here.
All of a sudden, Koch brother money's okay.
Yeah.
Sure, you get your own island. That's fine.
Coming up on The Big Picture, find out what dangerous people the conservative media have been palling around with. And no, I'm not talking about Republican lawmakers.
What drives the world?
The fear-mongering used by politicians.
Who makes decisions?
Considerable breakthrough has already been made.
Who can you trust?
No one who is imbued with a global missionary zeal.
Where are we heading?
State-controlled capitalism is called fascism.
When nobody dares to ask, we do. RT, question more.
Remember when Sarah Palin said this back in 2008?
Our opponent is someone who sees America as imperfect enough to pal around with terrorists who targeted their own country.
My question is, why does Sarah Palin herself think America is imperfect enough to pal around with terrorists who target their own country? After all, she's a paid employee of GOP TV, also known as Fox so-called News, and Fox is pretty well connected with some deranged terrorists, like the 4 radical militiamen in Georgia who were arrested this week after plotting to blow up government officials and poison cities with highly toxic ricin. As one of the plotters allegedly said, there's no way for us as militiamen to save this country, save the Constitution, save Georgia without doing something that's highly, highly illegal, murder. These terrorists were inspired by a former militia leader turned author, Mike Vanderboe, who wrote about a revolt against the federal government by militias. Vanderboe previously called for Americans to violently throw bricks through the windows of Democratic offices to protest health care reform back in 2009. By the way, some were thrown. And he's also been featured as a commentator, just like Sarah Palin, on, you guessed it, Fox so-called News or GOP TV. I guess Fox often lets dingbats on TV, as do a lot of networks, so we can't really blame them if one of their commentators inspired a bunch of terrorists in Georgia. But then there's a case of terrorist Scott Roeder, who killed abortion doctor George Tiller in his church back in 2009. Any idea where Roeder might have got his motivation to kill George Tiller and terrorize other abortion doctors across America?
When you talk about how conservative values have been lost in this country, you were talking before about the liberal media. You're saying maybe Fox is the exception. Do you think Fox is worthwhile?
Well, I'm not going to say anyone is worthwhile. But it's really surprising. You know, I would have never started watching Fox News if it wasn't for the fact that Beth was on there. And it was the things that he did. It was the things he exposed that blew my mind. I said, well, nobody does this.
So Roeder is another terrorist inspired by something he saw on GOP TV. And what about terrorist Byron Williams, the guy who loaded his car full of guns and ammunition and jumped on the highway on a mission to kill members of the ACLU and the Tides Foundation? Byron was stopped on the way by cops, wherein he got into a 12-minute shootout with them, more than 200 rounds fired before surrendering. Cops asked him what motivated him to terrorize this left-leaning organization, and here's what he had to say.
When you talk about how conservative values have been lost in this country, you were talking before about the liberal media. You're saying maybe Fox is the exception. Do you think Fox is worthwhile?
Well, I'm not going to say anyone is worthwhile. But it's really surprising. You know, I would have never started watching Fox News if it wasn't for the fact that that was on there. And it was the things that he did. It was the things he exposed that blew my mind. I said, well, nobody does this.
Glenn Beck blew his mind. Glenn Beck devoted a number of segments on his show to vilifying the Tides Foundation. He called them bullies, thugs who want to, quote, warp your children's brains and make sure they know how evil capitalism is, end of quote. Beck warned the Tides Foundation on his show, saying to them, I'm coming for you. No need to go after them, though, Glenn. Byron Williams tried to do it for you. The point is, as much as GOP TV likes to hype Islamic terrorism and Muslim caliphates and ground zero mosques, the biggest threat doesn't come from the Middle East. It comes from right here at home. It comes from domestic terror groups, as this chart from the FBI shows. Between 1980, okay, this is basically, these are all the other forms of terrorism in the United States that happened in the United States, according to the FBI, and this includes, 9/11. This is Muslim terrorism inside the United States. I mean, so, and in fact, interestingly, a chunk of this was Puerto Rican. It actually happened in Puerto Rico nationalism. There are other groups, and basically none of them are Muslims. 6% Muslims. So between 1980 and 2005, of all the terror attacks on U.S. soil, including 9/11, only 6% were carried out by Muslims. Just 6%, that's it. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, there are over 1,000 known hate groups operating right here inside the United States of America. And their number has grown 54% since 2000, or since Fox So-Called News took on their ultra-right-wing stance. And these hate groups are capable of unthinkable destruction, as we learned with the Oklahoma City bombing. And we nearly learned with this case of these militiamen who were arrested for plotting ricin attacks in Georgia. Between the militiamen, Scott Roeder, Byron Williams, and who knows who else has picked up a weapon after being frightened to violence, there's a common thread. And that common thread, the thing that you find going through all of these terrorist efforts, at least in the United States, well, you could probably generalize this worldwide, but speaking of this, that common thread is fear. Fear of the other, whether they be people of color or Muslims or gays, you name it. There's an industry in America, and always has been, that lives on fear. It's only when Americans learn to stand up to the fear industry and say, we're Americans. We're the land of the free and the home of the brave. We are not afraid. It's only then that these people will be stripped of their power to incite fear. And we'll see the hate groups and the domestic terrorists begin to fade away. That's the big picture for tonight. A quick announcement for our viewers in Los Angeles. Saturday night, tomorrow night, there'll be a free showing of the new movie Heist, Who Stole the American Dream, at 8 p.m. at Occupy LA in front of City Hall. It's a great new documentary, narrated by yours truly. There are more details at TomHartman.com. For more information on the stories we covered, visit our websites at TomHartman.com, freespeech.org, and RT.com. You can also check out our 2 YouTube channels. You'll find links over at TomHartman.com. This entire show is also available as a free video podcast on iTunes, and we have a free Tom Hartman iPhone and iPad app over at the App Store. You can contact us, send us feedback at Twitter at Tom_Hartman, on Facebook at Tom_Hartman, on our blogs, message boards, and telephone comment line at TomHartman.com. And don't forget, if you want it to work, if you want democracy to happen, it starts with you. When you get active, when you participate, get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Get out and occupy something. We'll see you next week.